So you've been out tracking the topic. We were sitting back here in New York talking about whether Hillary Clinton and her campaign are reacting to the New York Times story. And you talked to Hillary Clinton today about it in what Willie and I like to call an extended interview. Tell us about that.
It was not an extended interview, Mark. But, you know, she did stop instead of simply moving along and waving. I asked her about whether or not she thinks that Donald Trump has conducted himself well with women. Do you think Donald Trump has treated women well in the course of his life and business dealings?
I'm going to talk about what I want to do as president, and we're going to draw the contrast.
So
we're going to draw the contrast was about all we got there. But I mean, look, they don't want to talk about this, right? She wants to talk about literally everything else there is available to talk about with Donald Trump, which she did on the trail today, but not that one. That's one that they seem to be stepping away from.
So, go ahead.
Mike, I was going to ask you, so this New York Times story, whatever you think of it, seems ripe for the Clinton campaign to use against Donald Trump. Why aren't they even mentioning it in public?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that this is something that Secretary Clinton or her campaign need to take on directly. I mean, over a period of time, people are going to develop a sense for Donald Trump, his history, his leadership. But I think the campaign is focused on talking about the issues that they think are going to be relevant to voters. I think that's why you saw them jump on the tax issue the other day, because they see that as a material issue. I don't think they're in a hurry to rush down the gutter, which is ultimately where I think the campaigns expect that this thing is going to be fought. But I'm not sure they're in a rush to get there.
Kasie, how much of this on the Clinton campaign's part do you suspect is the fear of that asymmetrical warfare we've talked so much about, which is to say, if they start putting their toe in the water of Donald Trump's personal life, here he comes back tenfold on theirs?
Yeah, aides that I've talked to today are privately saying that, you know, they've drawn a very careful line in the sand here about not responding to personal attacks. You saw that, or what they call personal attacks. You saw that with the enabler comments earlier this week. It got a little bit awkward in the room when, you know, women and children kind of standing around Hillary Clinton, reporters asking about that particular subject. And they're honoring that in their own kind of approach to Donald Trump at this point. I also think in this particular case, I think Mike's right. If they go too early on this, it's potentially a problem. I also don't think that they think there was a huge bombshell in this New York Times story either. If there was something that was a little bit more clear cut, you may have seen them make a different calculation. But it was a little bit difficult the way it was presented in the New York Times story to come through with a clean headline where they felt the campaign getting involved would be beneficial.
Mike, in 2008 campaign, John Hamm and I reported that a lot of Democratic big figures, Harry Reid, Chuck Schumer, and others, were worried about Bill Clinton's personal life becoming an issue, and that's why they turned implicitly or sometimes openly to Barack Obama. In this case, the establishment has no other backup. They're not going to turn to Bernie Sanders. So how much worry do you either know about or suspect exists in Democratic circles now about possibility of an explosion of a scandal that will be around the neck of their nominee?
Look, I don't detect a lot of concern about that. Don't get me wrong. I don't think people are anxious or looking forward to what is ultimately going to become a very negative campaign. I think the Clinton campaign and their surrogates are definitely aware that this campaign is going to be no holds barred. But again, I think the Clinton campaign and Secretary Clinton in particular, I think her job is try to talk about what brand of change she wants to bring to this election, to the point that I think that you were talking about in an earlier segment with Dan. Make sure people find Donald Trump's brand of change unacceptable to a large number of voters, particularly those who are open-minded about the outcome in this election. I think that's where they want to have this campaign, not in the mud, not raising personal allegations about either candidate. There'll be plenty of that going on, but I don't think that's where they want to have this fight.
I was just going to ask you, Mike, you've been around these big campaigns before. If you were inside the Hillary Clinton campaign right now, despite all her built-in advantages of fundraising and demographic leads in important categories, how concerned would you be about Donald Trump as an opponent?
I'd be very concerned. But by the way, and I on your earlier segment about Dan's piece, I'm happy that people are worried about this campaign. The last thing they can afford to do is be complacent about this. Being concerned is partly how you win. Yes, it is asymmetrical. Yes, this campaign is going to be fought in states that Democrats probably haven't had to defend in a very long time. And it is disorienting, and I think it's probably a healthy thing for the Clinton campaign to approach it that way. They can't paint by the numbers in this campaign, but I don't think anybody, up to and including Secretary Clinton, thinks that.